Alright battlers, welcome back to a brand new Go Battle League video. I have a clean 5-0 with Granbull, Altaria, and Toxicroak. Let's get right into these fights. These battles all took place at over 2,800 battle rating. I've got Granbull with Charm, Close Combat, and Crunch, Altaria with the standard set, and Toxicroak with the standard moves as well. In this first matchup, we do see Skarmory come out in the lead. We lose that matchup really hard, so I switch into Altaria, and when you're in the Go Battle League, it's important to try to read what your opponent's team is in the back. We can't know for sure because they are blind battles, but my opponent did not switch out of Skarmory, and then I throw the Sky Attack here, and something very interesting happens that tells me a lot about what this trainer has in the back. They shield their Skarmory, so if they had a Bastiodon, a Probopass, a Registeel, anything like that that could really do well against Altaria, they would have already switched it in, but they didn't. They're going to keep their Skarmory on the battlefield here, and because they shielded not one but two Sky Attacks, I am definitely going to invest in my Altaria here because this thing is going to be the key to whatever my opponent has in the back. Now, sometimes your opponent could be faking you out really hard. Maybe they do have an Azumarill back there, but at this point, it's very unlikely. For example, if you have two grass types behind your Skarmory and your opponent brings out a Flyer, you got to get rid of that Flyer no matter what, and that is actually what is going to happen in this battle. This opponent here is running the famous Caleb Ping team because as soon as that Skarmory goes down, he's going to think things over, and out comes his Shiftry. So Shiftry is nothing that we have to worry about. He is going to get us with this attack here. However, I do have a healthy Toxicroak in the back as well as Granbull, and Granbull's charms are going to be super effective against this dark type Shiftry. However, I'm going to decide to bring in Toxicroak because I don't have exactly the right knowledge about what my opponent has, and Toxicroak with energy is more deadly than without. So if there is something like a Fairy in the back or an Azumarill, something like that, or another grass type, I can definitely throw the Sludge Bomb, whereas in a flat race, I probably wouldn't make it. My opponent has already made the mistake of staying in with Shiftry, so here comes my Toxicroak, gonna throw the Sludge Bomb here, and that will almost bring down Meganium. We're going to counter down, but not before the Frenzy Plant gets fired off. So as you can see, those few counters that we got off are really important. I do have my hard-hitting Granbull, though. It's going to come in here and sweep things up. One more Charm is going to delete the Shiftry for game one. I have really been enjoying this team. I used Granbull in an earlier video on the channel. I'll actually leave a link to it up there at the top of the screen if you'd like to check it out. It is an older one, but you know, it's still relevant. There have been some moveset changes, but as you see here in this lead, Scrafty is in enormous trouble. Got to get out of there immediately. My opponent comes into Mew, and I actually stay in to farm up a few charms, hoping to catch a Size Shock with my Altaria, but Mew is going to hold its energy, and I'm not worried unless it's an Ice Beam or an Icy Wind, but as you know, Mew's move pool is extremely vast. Luckily, most people run a Size Shock, Overheat, or Wild Charge, or some combination of that. So I'm going to spend this first shield here on Altaria because I want to win the switched in matchup. My opponent does go for another Wild Charge, and luckily this isn't a buffed Wild Charge. At the start of Season 2, Wild Charge is going to get even better, higher damage, and then it's going to lower your defense stat. So watch out for that, battlers. Season 2 is coming very soon. My opponent comes in here with Skarmory, and this is actually really bad for us. My only counter to Skarmory is going to be this Altaria because I have my Toxicroak in the back, which is going to die from, you know, a few air slashes and easily for one Sky Attack. And then I have Granbull, which is a Fairy type, which is not going to be very good against Steel. My opponent makes some pretty critical errors here, not shielding Skarmory. I'm actually going to swap into my Granbull to catch this Scrafty, and we delete it so quickly. My opponent comes back in with Skarmory. I'm going to go for Close Combat. Not a lot of trainers know that Granbull has Close Combat, but my opponent does decide to shield. So these charms are still going to do great damage, even though they are resisted because that Close Combat did not debuff our attack. My opponent actually goes ahead and Sky Attacks Granbull as well, which is good that they didn't farm it down. As you can tell though, this Skarmory's health is getting really low, so I decided to bring in Toxicroak. Now the idea here is to counter down the Skarmory because it's so weak and spend my final shield here on Toxicroak, which we do. Going to take down that Skarmory before anything else can happen. GG's. Going to this next game here, a Granbull is really great. I picked it as my Charmer because the Charm does such enormous damage. It's just so devastating. Here we go with a Shadow Gardevoir though. Now this is a very comparable matchup. Shadow Gardevoir is going to do tons of damage, but that 20% debuff on defense really doesn't do it much favors. We actually double KO, and in this situation you want to wait for your opponent to send out their Pokemon first. In my head, I'm mulling over the options, and I go ahead and go with Altaria into that Registeel. So we did lose that. That's not exactly what we wanted, but my opponent is going to overfarm energy here, as am I. Altaria is actually not too bad in this matchup, especially if you give it shields. Dragon Breath is just so incredibly oppressive. I do swap in here to Toxicroak, and out comes Victreebel. So not a great situation, but I know at this point I'm saving both of my shields for Altaria, because in my mind it is way too risky to rely on Toxicroak after all of this Razor Leaf damage to get through 2 opposing shields and then try to keep it alive. As you can tell here, we don't even have the option to use shields because Shadow Victreebel is just so incredibly it's just puts so much pressure on your Pokemon, and the damage it dishes out is just so incredibly high. Gonna go here into Altaria, and speaking of relative damage, Leaf Blade will do much less than Flash Cannon, but it is an Acid Spray. I over-tapped there on Sky Attack, which was an accident, but I realized I just need to take out this Victreebel either way. Out comes Registeel, and we do still have 2 shields. Definitely going to shield up these Flash Cannons because we are weakened by the Acid Spray. So it would obviously KO. I mean, that'd be a huge bummer not to use shields at this point, but gonna go ahead and throw a Sky Attack here. And then I calculate that after our Dragon Breaths, 1 more Sky Attack will be enough to finish this. This Registeel is not going to outpace us, even though Altaria is a bit slow to get to the Sky Attacks. We have enough energy on it here to outpace Reggie and win this match. My opponent actually leaves the game, so they knew what was going on. They saw the writing on the wall. Going into this next battle against Haruki, I believe is how you say it. So with this line, the Azumarill lead is kind of tricky to deal with. The charms are going to do a lot of damage though, because Fairy doesn't resist Fairy, so these are hitting for neutral and taking big chunks out of Azumarill. I like to throw a charge attack here as well to force my opponent's shield. Azumarill is going to get to this Ice Beam, which is not a huge deal, but as you can tell, Hydro Pump, as you can tell, they are already at half health, and my opponent is going to continue to go ahead and fire off the bubbles there. They're not going to be able to get to an Ice Beam in time, though. Crunch is going to grab this first shield. There was some lag, so I think my opposing Azumarill might have missed a bubble, but it's not a huge deal. I think they were close, but not that close. Gonna go ahead and fire off the close combat here against the Registeel. Again, hoping that my opponent doesn't realize Granbull has a fighting type attack that can hit so hard. My opponent is hit by the lag bug again, but I'm unable to get to close combat, and they're going to go ahead and fire off the Flash Cannon. So either way, I don't think there's really a chance for me to get to close combat. Maybe there's a little more damage inflicted from my charms, but the lag didn't have a huge role in that battle, I don't think. But going to bring in Toxicroak here. Go ahead and give Toxicroak my final shield. My opponent comes in with Altaria, and I'm going to go ahead here and throw the Sludge Bomb on it. Switching to my own Altaria, and with that health advantage, as long as my opponent doesn't go for Dragon Pulse, we are in good shape. Gonna push here for the Sky Attack, and maybe they were trying to go for Dragon Pulse, but either way, we're gonna beat them to the punch and fire this off. Registeel's going to come back in, but it's very weak. I think Altaria can survive a Flash Cannon at this range. Yep, we absolutely do. And then we're going to get here to the Sky Attack, but my opponent leaves that match as well. This has been a really fun set. I did have a few losses with this team. It's not perfect, as any team is not. It does struggle a little bit against Mud Boys, having no grass. We do see Granbull into Charizard, and I'm definitely getting Rose Cup flashbacks. Rose Cup was one of my favorite cups, and I definitely used both of these Pokemon on my team. Gonna go ahead here and fire off several charms. I expect this to be a Blast Burn, so I'm gonna go ahead and shield up my Granbull. As you can tell though, this Charizard is pretty weak, and they did spend a lot of energy on Blast Burn, so I come in right in here with Altaria and try to catch him, but he's going to get the Dragon Claw off first. Not a huge problem at all for my team, as Altaria can take that no problem. My opponent is unable to get to a second Dragon Claw, which is really good. I did give up the shield and switch advantage, but I kept that Granbull alive. In comes this Alolan Raichu, and I'm going to go ahead right for the Sky Attack. This Volt Switch charges so quickly. I think it's only maybe 2 to get to the Thunder Punch, just something totally ridiculous. There's a third one, and I know this is probably going to be a Thunder Punch, so I'm not going to shield this. Altaria, again, such a great flyer. I'm unable to get to another Sky Attack because of that Volt Switch damage, but Altaria put in serious work against this Raichu. Gonna go in here with Toxicroak, get some energy together. That was a couple of Volt Switches there, so the Thunder Punch is going to arrive. And this is just the craziness of Raichu. I don't play with it much, so I'm not overly familiar, but he's actually able to get to another Thunder Punch there, which is really devastating for Toxicroak. Thought about countering down, but I'm going to go ahead and fire off the Mud Bomb. I actually fired this off too to make that Volt Switch damage not count. If you can get your charge move off before they are able to unleash theirs, sometimes you can make it work out. So I bring in Granbull here to fire off this close combat because I need that last shield, and this will pave the way for my Toxicroak to land the Sludge Bomb. My opponent does make a mistake here. Go ahead, going straight for the Frenzy Plant. I think they should have farmed down and then unleash the Frenzy Plant of Toxicroak, but either way, a Toxicroak's higher attack stat is going to make it win the CMP tie. So very, very close game 5. Battlers, I hope you enjoyed this. Leave me a comment down below what you thought. I know Granbull is kind of an off-meta pick, but I really enjoyed using it. If you have off-meta picks that you're enjoying, let me know down in the comments below. Leave me a like if you watched this far, and thank you so much. Subscribe for more Go Battle League and Silph Arena content.